Hey y'all, so recently I read two Melanie Dickerson books. It had been a while since I read anything by her, but I remembered thinking that she was a good author and that she usually got some pretty high praise. So first, I read The Golden Braid, and I grabbed this one because it's a Rapunzel retelling, and for my senior course in college, I studied fairy tales, and I wrote my senior paper on Rapunzel. So I've always loved retellings of Rapunzel. In that paper, I just talked about how the fairy tale has changed over the many, many years from Grimm to the retellings we get today. But that was before this was published, so this was exciting to read. It came out in November of 2015, so it's fairly recent still, and it takes place in way old school Germany, kind of what we usually would just label as medieval, almost. So in this book, the girl's name is straight up Rapunzel, and she's been kidnapped, blah, 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 blah. And actually, at the very beginning, I got to page, I think it was in the 80s. I was in the 80s of this book, and I was thinking, nothing has happened. I felt like there wasn't really a plot. Obviously, things had been happening. Rapunzel and who she thinks is her mother, Mother Gothel. Well, she does know that it's an adoptive mother, but she thinks it was all done very nicely and whatever, instead of creepily, like the real story. But so they're obviously like doing things. They're traveling, they're surviving, they're being people in old school Germany. But I didn't actually feel like anything dramatic had happened, and the only thing that was keeping me reading was my love of the Rapunzel story. And that was around page 80, 85. But then, after I thought that, it wasn't too long until stuff did pick up. So there was quite a bit of establishment of the world and the story and Rapunzel herself. But then it picked up and it got a lot better. Rapunzel obviously has a love interest, and you know that it's him as soon as he shows up in the story. You just know it's going to be him. But their story was so cute and so well written. It was one of the best romantic love stories that I have read in a very long time. Melanie Dickerson just nailed it. And something else I loved was that there was this equality in their relationship. When they first meet, he rescues Rapunzel and Mother Gothel from bandits on the highway, and then he ends up getting hurt in that battle though, and then Rapunzel saves him because he got hurt, and so there's this back and forth of them equally helping each other, which I loved. That was something I talked about in my senior paper on Rapunzel, was how in the Grimm fairy tale, which was the original in that paper because that's the farthest back written version that we have, Rapunzel completely has to rely on the prince for anything. She hardly does anything for herself. Whereas now we're getting these Rapunzel retellings where there's so much equality and help. And that's not just in Rapunzel. That's in a lot of fairy tales and a lot of stories in general that have been going on, because that's what society wants to see. They don't want to see the whole damsel in distress needs a savior thing anymore. That's not interesting to society. But anyway, so I loved their romance because it was equal and it grew. At first, Rapunzel thought he was very pompous and he thought she was this dumb peasant girl, and this was before they figured out her true identity as a princess who had been stolen from her parents. But so they love each other like with no inhibitions, and it was just great. It was really cute. And finally, by the end, when they realized that they both equally love each other and that there's this whole thing, it was just so well written that at one point I was like, this is so good! And I was like laying on my bed and kicking my feet because I was so excited about their relationship, and it was very well done. And it does stay true to the Rapunzel story. Well, minus the magic. There wasn't really magic in this. But she does end up in a tower and things like that. So I liked that too, that there were the real elements of the original fairy tale. Something else that I love is that Melanie Dickerson, she's Christian, and she's not afraid to write faith in God into her novels, which I think is very cool, especially in the YA world today. That's not addressed as often anymore as it used to be, because that's not as much of a part of society anymore. But it makes sense for the time frame and the location of this book, though. It's very real, so it wasn't like she was pushing God or pushing religion. It was natural, and that was something else that I admire Melanie Dickerson for, that, because she's able to just weave it in and it fits with the time period, and it was just so well done. So I read this first, and then I went back to the library and I saw this book, The Princess Spy, also by Melanie Dickerson, and I read the back and I realized that this is the story of Rapunzel's sister, who is still a princess. She didn't get stolen. So Rapunzel got stolen. This is her story. And then here's a sister. And I realized when I read this one that Melanie Dickerson has done this whole little series on this family and the different children of these parents. She's kind of written all their stories, and so I'm excited to kind of check it out and read more. But so in this one, The Princess Spy, it does not go off a fairy tale, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But it was also the relationship again, equal and super cute. Loved it. So in this one, their father's castle is being taken over, which was also part of the plot in Golden Braid. So there was a lot of crossover, but because Rapunzel doesn't know who she is, there's not a lot of interaction between these two sisters in their individual stories. So they're still very unique in and of themselves, but there is some crossover, which was then interesting to read, and I enjoyed it. But so in this one, she kind of spies, and that's why it's called The Princess Spy. I actually think that title is a little bit cheesy for the book, but whatever. You know, I didn't pick it. Who knows who did? Melanie Dickerson might have not had as much say in it as she wanted. But anyway, also very well written. Same thing with God and faith being interwoven. It was just done very, very well. And again, the relationship was very good. There's this, you can see it develop, which I love, because I feel like sometimes, especially with like dating apps, we expect things instantly. Even relationships, where successful relationships take time to develop, at least in my opinion. And I know there's exceptions to that, but generally, real relationships that stay strong and solid take time to develop. And Melanie Dickerson portrays those in these books. This is Margaretha, and she and Lord Colin get sucked into this together to try to save her father's castle from this guy who's coming to take over it and blah, 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 blah. And it's ridiculous, and the guy's pretending to be her suitor and whatever. But so at first there's just like, we have to work together and be a team. And then slowly, as they're working together and going on this adventure, they start to love each other. And she, Margaretha, is very talkative, which she doesn't think that any man will love her, because her family even teases her about that. And she doesn't think that anyone is going to be able to put up with her. But that's one of the qualities that Lord Colin loves about her best. And so it was just really sweet and cute. And Melanie Dickerson just does a fabulous job of writing religion into her novels and writing the romance in a very uplifting and positive way, and also what should be realistic. I really enjoy Melanie Dickerson's writing. I think she does a good job. So like I said, I'm interested in reading the other ones that take place with their other siblings. I don't know how soon that'll actually happen though, because my list of reading is really long, but we'll see. And so I might do reviews on those, but if they're similar in the way, obviously their plots are going to be different. We had a Rapunzel story, then we have a talkative girl and this lord trying to save her family. So obviously different plots, but similar in the way the relationships develop and the religion. So if the other books are kind of like that, then I might not review them. But Melanie Dickerson is a fabulous writer, and I highly recommend her to anyone who likes the princessy kind of books. She does a really good job, and I think that even if you're not religious, you can still enjoy her books, because religion was a huge part of the world in that time period, and so it's very realistic, even if that doesn't apply to you today. So I hope you enjoy them, and thanks for watching, and keep reading!